Welcome back to the Camilla Tominey Show on GB News. A little ray of sunshine has joined me in the studio now because the former Liberal Democrat MP and Transport Minister Norman Baker is... I mean, have you borrowed that from Michael Portillo's wardrobe? Or
I think he borrows his coats and jackets from me.
That's right. You've got a little exchange between you. Norman, can we grasp the nettle here?
Sure.
Is Sir Ed Davey making a bit of a fool of himself? We've had him going down slip and slides, falling into Lake Windermere. What was the other thing he did? Gleefully ride down a hill on a bicycle with his legs in the air. It's unedifying, Norman. What do you think?
Well, look, I mean, the reality is that over the last how many years, it's been almost difficult, very difficult for the Lib Dems to get coverage from the media because the media is obsessed with Labour versus Tory. And in order to get some input into the system, I think this is the reason Ed's adopted some of these stunts. Of course, they mean nothing in themselves, but what they do is guarantee some coverage. And then when Ed's standing on a board in the middle of Windermere, he can talk about pensions, talk about the NHS, talk about sewage. And it's an opportunity to get himself on TV, which we need to do. We need to cut through. And we can't cut through to voters with our issues if we're not being covered.
But are you cutting through? Name me the Lib Dems' top 3 policies of this campaign.
Well, I mean, for example, there's the NHS about more GPs, 8,000 more GPs.
Right.
There's an issue about dealing with sewage, abolishing Ofwat, and getting the sewage sorted out. There's an issue about collecting uncollected taxes. £36 billion of taxes aren't collected in this country. That could be used for public services. So there's a whole range of stuff we're putting forward. The Lib Dems don't have a shorter policy.
No.
What we're short of is the opportunity to explain those.
That's what I love about you, Norman Baker. You've done your homework. Because I was thinking that maybe you wouldn't be able to name them. Whether the public can, whoever knows. Now, to be fair to Davey and indeed the Lib Dems, from the calamity that was 2019, I think we can predict, can't we, that the Lib Dems are going to pick up a lot of seats. How many do you think they'll win and where do you think they'll win them, Norman?
Well, let me give you a personal answer. This isn't a Lib Dem answer. This is my own assessment, is up 50 upwards. And in fact, more than 50.
No.
I think so. And the GB News poll you saw the other day, Camilla, put us very close to the Conservatives in terms of number of seats. The reality is that people have stopped listening to the Conservatives. It's ABC, anyone but Conservatives. It's 1997 with bells on in terms of the public. And people are saying...
Hang on. I'm going to cut in there. I don't think it's 1997 with bells on because you haven't got this mass exodus from the Tories to Labour. You've got an exodus of the Tories to don't know and undecided and reform. I mean, what's the polling doing when it comes to Tories considering going yellow? Well,
exodus to reform, of course, helps Labour and Lib Dems. Our polling shows that we're doing very well in the blue wall. Is Labour doing better in the red wall?
Yeah.
So the amalgamation of red and blue wall.
And things.
Yeah. Boris Johnson managed to amalgamate the red wall and the blue wall. The red wall's going to Labour by and large, and the blue wall's going to Lib Dems by and large. We had a poll, for example, in Jeremy Hunt's seat.
Yes.
53% voted Tory last time. They're at 29, we're on 35. So that's sort of...
To be fair, Jeremy Hunt's given an interview to Anna's paper, the Mail on Sunday this morning, where he's basically said that he's told his children he might not retain his seat.
Yes.
So he could suffer that famous Portillo moment of 2024, the Lib Dems breathing down his neck. Do you think the Lib Dems breathing down the neck of Michael Gove in Surrey Heath was a reason he stood down?
I think it's a good possibility that's the reason. If you look across Surrey, look across Hampshire, look across Sussex, that swathe of the home counties, the Tories are in big trouble because the Conservative voters down there are by and large quite moderate Conservative voters. They want public services. They want to make sure we've got good relations with Europe. They want to make sure law and order is maintained. They're not seeing it from this bunch of estate agents running the government. All
right, fair enough. I mean, slight maligning of estate agents, Norman. We all need them to sell our houses. Can I ask you about the Lib Dems and Christianity? David Campanale has said that he can't stand in Sutton and Cheam, an absolutely plum seat for the Yellows, actually, because of a 2-year campaign against him by activists and local party members. This is because he's a committed Christian. The Lib Dems have got form on this. Tim Farron, the former leader, stepped down from politics because his religion didn't align with his party. What's wrong with the Lib Dems? What's wrong with being Christian in the Lib Dems?
The answer is nothing wrong with being Christian.
Well, clearly there's a problem for David Campanale and Tim Farron.
Well, no, Tim Farron is doing fantastically well, actually.
Well, he's no longer leader. He stood down because he was a Christian.
Well, he didn't stand down because he was a Christian. He stood down because he hadn't actually handled the issues very well at that particular point in terms of his belief system. But look, I mean, Ed Davey...
How could he have handled... What's wrong with being... Is this a case of, like, Tony Blair saying we don't do God? Liberal Democrats don't allow people to do God because it might put off
No, not
atheist
at all.
voters?
No, you'll find Ed Davey and I think the rest of the London MPs are all Christian, as a matter of fact. There's not an issue about that.
What's happened to this David Campanale?
I don't know the answer to that, Camilla, to be perfectly honest with you, but it's a local issue. It's not about Christianity. It's probably about David Campanale.
Well, he says it's about the fact that activists and local party members campaigned against him because of his outward Christianity.
Well, I don't think that's probably true.
Well, hang on, he's not here. Well, this is what he claims.
Well, I mean, he claims it, but all I'm saying to you is that there's no bar on religion at all in the Lib Dems. We're a very open church, if you use that word, and the Lib Dem MPs, Ed Davey downwards, many of them, including Ed, are firm Christians. All
right. Should we talk about whether the Lib Dems would consider coalition government again? I mean, it ended your political career. You were a fan of coalition governments? Because there could be a scenario. We've had the bookies shortening the odds on hung parliament this week. If they're in some kind of confidence and supply sort of arrangement with Labour or indeed in coalition government, would you advise your former colleagues to do that or not? Because
what I would say, first of all,
cataclysmic.
Yes. Well, what I'd say, first of all, is that if you look back at the last 14 years, the coalition government was the most stable government of any government in that period. And we've had a succession of disasters and Tory prime ministers and Tory-only governments. So coalition government, as a sense, is actually quite a good way of governing.
So if invited by Starmer, Davey should do a deal?
Well, no, I think we've got to wait for the results. And I think
hypothetically?
Well, hypothetically, I think it's unlikely to be a coalition because we got our fingers burnt last time.
But if Ed came to you and said, Norman, you've been around the block a bit, I've been offered a deal to go into coalition government with Labour, what would you say? Well,
my personal view is we shouldn't do anything unless we got a reform to the voting system guaranteed.
So you could hook up with Nigel Farage and push for proportional representation.
I think the idea of linking up with Nigel Farage is a step too far.
We may well be. Norman Baker, thank you to you and your jacket this morning. Delighted to see you in the studio. By the way, we do ask the Lib Dems to come on, as in actual currently serving Lib Dem MPs, but 2 weeks running we haven't been able to make it work.